Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, February 5th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, and I'm joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, we're 2 days after signing day. I just want you to reflect on Ohio State's 2016 recruiting class. They finished fourth in the country, barely behind Florida State and LSU for the second and third spot. Michigan's fifth, but kind of a distant fifth behind Ohio State. Just your thoughts on Ohio State's recruiting class and their ranking.
Yeah, they finished high enough that this is the same. Fourth is second is third. I mean, they're all right there together. I don't even get the math on how Florida State and Ohio State aren't at least tied because it looks like they have the exact same class. But, you know, it is what it is right now. Signing day ratings, you got to be careful. It's like getting graded on draft day in the NFL. Oh, yeah, the Browns got an A- today. No, they didn't. When we reevaluate in 3 years, the Browns never get an A- in the draft. They get a C. And in a couple of years, when we reevaluate this OSU class, odds are we'll reevaluate it and say they finished first or they finished fifth or whatever. You know, it's kind of like back in 2013. Whenever you brought in the Bosa and Elliott and all those guys in the group, the question was, were they number two? Were they number one? It was kind of up in the air. Well, after having seen what those guys did, I don't think anybody debated that was the number one class in the country. So, you know, whenever you rank a class before any of these kids have even been on the field for spring practice, we know what they have athletically. The eyeball test has certainly been passed. There's a lot of ways that you think this class is absolutely loaded. But really, you have to wait and see what these kids do when they get on the field to say whether or not Meyer & Company succeeded officially. I think at this point all the indications are it's an exceptional class. I think it's the sixth or seventh year in a row they've had the number one class in the Big Ten. So that's certainly something to be proud of whenever you're trying to beat a league that's getting better and better every year. I think it's a really good, deep class across the board, you know. I think the only spot they're really missing out on players is at defensive tackle. And, you know, here's the real exciting thing going into this season, Dave. Ohio State essentially has three straight top five classes, whether they're third, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever. We'll call them top five the last 3 years. Hardly any of the last 3 years' worth of classes have even played. You know, they have guys like Raekwon McMillan and Damon Webb and Curtis Samuel who have played. But beyond that, there really isn't a lot that we've seen from three consecutive loaded classes. And, you know, from my experience, I don't remember OSU ever recruiting this consistently elite. There's going to be a ton of talent fighting for playing time this spring. That's going to be really exciting to watch.
And switching gears, let's look at the current team. I want to get your prediction on who the starting offensive line will be for the 2016 Buckeyes. We know two of them, center Pat Elflein, guard Billy Price. Fill in the other three spots. Who's going to be the starting tackles? Who's going to be the other starting guard for the Buckeyes, in your opinion?
Well, the calculus for this really changed right before signing day because I had mentally penciled in Prince at left tackle and Jamarco Jones at right tackle. But, man, signing Malcolm Pridgeon completely changes that equation. Urban and company would not have brought in a borderline five-star junior college recruit who's 6'8" and 330 to have him ride the bench or play guard, right? So I honestly at this point have to think that Pridgeon's the favorite to start at right tackle. And what does that mean for Jamarco Jones? That means Jamarco Jones may be moving to that guard position. Now, I don't know if we're necessarily going to have this for 100% certainty until the fall, but because Pridgeon isn't going to be at OSU for spring practice. But, you know, right now I have to think it goes Prince, Price, Elflein, Jones, and then Pridgeon at right tackle. And that certainly is a change from before. And it also brings up the possibility of, is Billy Price going to get the Tim Anderson role of playing maybe on both sides of the football a little bit if they're not happy with the D tackles? Because, of course, Billy Price is the strongest guy on the team, and there's a lot of good young guards, guys like Demetrius Knox and Evan Lyle and company, who are kind of chomping at the bit to get on the field. So, you know, the O-line position is certainly fluid and up in the air. The good news is there's a lot of talent to work with to fill those spots.
Great minds think alike. That's my starting five as well. We'll see what happens. And as you mentioned, I love the depth on the offensive line. They have great coaches. They have Ed Warner as the offensive coordinator, now Greg Studrala as the offensive line coach. I think he really gets it. And I think that's how they're going to line up. I think Isaiah Prince will be the left tackle, and we'll have Price, Elflein. I'm also picking Jamarco Jones to move inside and start at right guard, although it won't surprise me if Evan Lyle starts there. It won't surprise me if Demetrius Knox or Matt Burrell starts there. I think right guard is really up for grabs, but I'll pick Jamarco Jones there, and I agree with you. I think Malcolm Pridgeon will be the starting right tackle. Before we move on to more football, Ohio State basketball last night really punched their ticket to the NIT, in my opinion. I thought early in the season, I thought there was no way they were going to make the NCAA tournament. And they went on their run to start the Big Ten season. I'm thinking maybe they can sneak in. Now I'm back to thinking they really have no chance. They're now 14-10 overall, just 6-5 in Big Ten play. Lost to Wisconsin last night, 79-68. So they lost by 11 points. they started the game down 11-0. So a lot of times, my dad used to always say this, all you have to do is tune into the last 5 minutes of a basketball game, that's all that matters. Not last night, it didn't matter. The first minute mattered. Buckeyes don't fall down 11-0, they might win that game. So I think we're looking at an NIT team. I still think backs next year, they can be phenomenal. Not just good, but phenomenal. We saw Jaquan Lyle last night. It was kind of a one-man show. He's been a disappointment for much of this year, but he's had a couple good games now. Rutgers, he had the triple-double, and last night he was amazing. But still, this team, they're just not going anywhere. Next year they're going to be good, or great maybe. This year, NIT bound, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Wisconsin is, I know they have this great home court advantage, but the truth of the matter is that Wisconsin isn't that great this year. This is the kind of game that they had to win if you look at their schedule to see them to get to 20 wins and get in. Because I don't think this team gets in unless they get to 20. Right now, this team's looking like 18-15, 19-15, maybe if they win a couple of games in the Big Ten tournament. Barring an upset against Michigan State or an upset against Iowa, I mean, they don't really have that signature win to get in. I mean, we all like to look at that Kentucky game and say, hey, you know, that was a moment where the team figured themselves out a little bit. Well, no. It was a game where we saw the talent and potential of a very young team coming together, but, you know, we've seen the downside of an extremely young team that isn't loaded with top 5 NBA pre-entry kids, you know? This is the type of team that, I agree with you, next year is going to be very good. The year of experience for all these guys is going to do them wonders. But right now, they're a young team who's consistently inconsistent, and that just kind of is who they are. And at 14-10, not a lot of time left in the year, you're going to see them probably continue to putter along around 500 in the Big Ten play. And you know what? An NIT thing might not be the worst thing. Like, what would be better for a young team? Making the NCAA tournament as an 11 seed or a play-in game type team and getting knocked out after a game or two? Or maybe getting into the NIT and getting to play an extra 3 or 4 games to develop further. You know, I don't want to say it. This kind of reminds me a little bit of the old argument of, oh, would you rather Ohio State win or play in the national championship game and lose, or go to the Rose Bowl and win? Well, of course you take a shot at the title. That's a different story. But this team's not winning a national championship in basketball, so it may be almost better to get these guys some extra games in the NIT, and that's probably where they deserve to be anyways.
The Super Bowl is Sunday, and it is littered with Buckeyes. 5 Buckeyes will be playing in the game, the most of any collegiate program. 4 of them for the Carolina Panthers, Andrew Norwell, Kirk Coleman, Ted Ginn Jr., and Philly Brown. And then for the Denver Broncos, Bradley Roby. Panthers are favored by 5.5 points. This is easy for me. I'm not even a Broncos hater, but just the fact that the Panthers have 4 Buckeyes on that team, I'm a Carolina Panthers fan on Sunday. Now, I think I'm talking to someone who's a little biased here because your Steelers knocked my Bengals out of the playoffs, then the Broncos knocked your Steelers out of the playoffs, so I imagine you're not a big Broncos fan anyway. But Panthers favored by 5.5 points. Who are you rooting for? Who do you think is going to win? And who do you think is going to cover?
Well, I look at this game kind of like I looked at that Seahawks-Broncos game a couple of years ago where I expected the Seahawks to win that game by 2 touchdowns, and they ended up blowing the Broncos out. The truth of the matter is that, Rule 1, when in doubt, root for the team with the most Buckeyes, which is the Panthers. Rule number 2, when in doubt, root for the team that has the better quarterback, which in this case is the Panthers. And Rule 3, when in doubt, pick the team you think is just flat out better, and in this case, that's the Panthers. You know, if the Panthers don't win, it'll be a nice story that Peyton Manning won his final game before he retires because that guy cannot play any further. The fact he's in a Super Bowl right now is a borderline miracle. Which maybe that's the one thing that I guess I'm underestimating is the allure of winning one for Peyton from a Broncos team that has a very, very good defense that includes former Buckeye Brad Roby. But I look at this game and I see the Panthers by 10 to 14 points. I mean, I don't think it's going to be that close. I don't think Peyton really has that big of a game in him against a very good Panthers defense. I think Kirk Coleman's going to be back there intercepting some passes. And, you know, truth be told, the Panthers have been the best team in the league all year. I'm picking the Panthers in this game, and I don't really think it's going to be that dramatic. But, hey, if the Broncos do win, then it's a nice story for Peyton. So it's kind of a best-case scenario Super Bowl when you don't have any rooting interest, really. I'm not going to be upset with the outcome one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I'll be rooting for Carolina, and I do think they're going to win. But this Denver defense, if I was putting money down on this game, I'd probably take the points. I'd probably bet on Denver because their defense, I think, is going to keep them in this game. And Peyton, even though he has the noodle arm now, just his intelligence, I think, is going to do enough to keep them in the game. And I won't be shocked if Denver wins this game. But I'll pick Carolina to win, but Denver to cover. But I'll definitely be rooting for the Buckeye-laden Carolina Panthers. It's really cool seeing these guys. I mean, especially guys like Andrew Norwell. It's still one of the great mysteries of life that he even invited to the NFL Combine. This is a kid that was a 3-year starter at Ohio State. 3-year starter at Ohio State. It was a first-team All-Big Ten selection. Wasn't even invited to the Combine, went undrafted, was a starter as a rookie last year, now is one of the best guards in the NFL. Kurt Coleman, another one of my favorites. Teddy Ginn, one of my favorites, like Philly Brown as well. So that's my team on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I can't believe that Norwell didn't get invited to the NFL Combine. That, again, like you put it, one of life's great mysteries. There was no sense behind that when you have guys from, like, D2, never heard of you university, you get invited to the Combine, but Andrew freaking Norwell wasn't. That was nuts. So, and here's the other thing, too. Buckeyes have a certain persuasion. Remember, the great Ted Ginn Jr. is the greatest returner in the history of Ohio State football. It would be very appropriate for Teddy to get a chance at winning the Super Bowl after falling short a few years ago. Because remember, there was another very Buckeye-laden team in the 49ers who made it to the Super Bowl and lost. Now that there's no idiotic Michigan man in charge of the team, I think they have a much better chance of finally getting that title for all those extra Buckeyes are rooting for.
I like it. A little shot at Jim Harbaugh to finish the show there. I like it. Great stuff as always out of the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. I am Dave Biddle. Thanks to the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Take it away, best damn band in the land.